guys, welcome back to Ashar Books. Today I'm going to talk about my favorite books for the second quarter of the year. So earlier in the year I did a book all about my favorite books for the first quarter, which was January, February, and March. And now we are actually already in finished the second quarter, which was April, May, and June. So I wanted to do a video kind of talking about my favorites for the second half. I really enjoyed doing the first one, and I just think at the end of the year it's going to be really fun and helpful to kind of see what my favorites were for each of the quarters. So these are in no particular order because that would be way too hard, but I kind of just picked the ones that really were A, 5-star reads, and also just really kind of stuck with me. So the first one is Sleepless in Manhattan by Sarah Morgan. This is the first one in her New York series. I just thought this was a fantastic kind of contemporary romance, and I really enjoyed reading it. I love the characters, I love the plot. It was such a fun read. It's great on audio, and I keep thinking about these characters, and I'm planning on continuing the series, and I'm really excited to find a good contemporary series because sometimes I have trouble finding one that's not too fluffy but also not too like serious. I know that makes absolutely no sense, but this was just a really good middle ground book for me. The next one I want to mention is The Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne. I just felt like this was such a different book and for a historical, and I've read two of her books now, this one and The Hunter, and I haven't read the other couple in that series yet, but I plan to. It was just so different, and again, the characters just really stuck with me. I felt like it was definitely a grittier, kind of darker romance. It was not your light and fluffy kind of typical historical romance, and the characters and the men especially came from really dark backgrounds, but this one in particular, I loved Dorian and his fairy, and I thought it was the sweetest story. I mean, when a book had me crying from like pretty much chapter 1, you know it was going to be an interesting read. The next one is a more recent read, and that was The Promise of Fire, and I was just really happily surprised by the series. Also, I know I'm not giving like huge synopses on these books, and that's because I've already kind of given those in previous videos, but if you do want to know any more information about any of these books, just let me know, but I'm kind of just giving my brief ideas on them. But I loved this one. I thought that the characters of Kat and Griffin were fantastic. I read the first 2 books in the series. I still have to read the third one, but I cannot wait to finish the series. It was the perfect blend of romance and fantasy, and for someone who loves romance, I thought it was perfect. I just loved how it had a really dual kind of storyline between the love story and the fantasy. I didn't feel like either one was lacking, because sometimes I think that can be a struggle for a fantasy romance books. The next one is Blame It on the Duke by Lenora Bell. I read my first Lenora Bell in the second quarter of the year, and I really liked it. I actually read this one first, which I realized is third in a series, but I felt like it was okay, and I've read I think 2 of her other books already after this, but this one was still my favorite. I just thought it was so unique, and I thought her writing was brilliant. It sucked you in, and the characters were really different. I liked how Alice really just had plans for her future other than just marriage, and how Nicholas really, while he seems like a playboy on the outside, there was a lot more to his character and kind of how his father was sick, and he kind of thought he had that same fate. I loved a good arranged marriage, or a good arranged kind of relationship trope, and I thought this one was done really well in here because it wasn't boring. Like, it was almost like as soon as they got together, that was when the excitement really starts. The next one I want to mention is The Wild Heir by Karina Halley. I've read quite a few contemporaries this year, or in the second quarter, but I felt like a lot of them I just didn't stick with me for whatever reason, even the ones that I did enjoy, and this one really did. I love a good royalty romance. I thought this one was really good. I love the kind of wild prince idea, but he was definitely, again, more to him than meets the eye, and I liked how he just really was trying to figure out his way in the world. I loved the female character in this book. I thought it was brilliant. If you're looking for a royalty read, I really recommend this one. The first one in the series is good as well, which is called The Swedish Prince, but I liked this one a lot better. The next one I want to mention is The Rogue's Wager by Christy Caldwell, but really just any Christy Caldwell book. I know I've mentioned her a few times, but I really just think her books are wonderful, and I haven't read all of them, obviously. She's got such a large backlist, but I have read about 4 of her books now in this series, and I just think they're great. If you, again, are looking for something a little different in your historical, something with characters with a lot more kind of meat to them, and definitely kind of like a troubled past and kind of coming to terms with that, and also heroines that can kind of give back what they're given, you know, like they're not going to just sit back and let things happen to them. I definitely recommend her work. Everything I've read so far I've loved, and I just can't suggest her enough. The next one is another fantasy romance, and that is The Winter King by C.L. Wilson. Both this and A Promise of Fire were both great. They're definitely very different. To me, this one is a little more of like a high fantasy type romance. I will say this did have romance in it. I think A Promise of Fire had a bit more. And that one had a little more like Greek mythology, whereas this one is pretty strict fantasy. But I really enjoyed this one as well. It was a very dense book, but I just really loved getting immersed in it. I do want to read the second book in the series, but I feel like this book is what made me want to start picking up more fantasy romance books, because I used to read more of that genre before, but I hadn't read too much lately, and this one just really kicked off my kind of like love for it again, so that's why I had to put this on the list. Next is Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. This one was great. This one was fantastic. I just love this. Again, it was really unique for a Highlander romance. I'm a sucker for one of Highlander romance, but that, like all historicals, can sometimes get a little cookie cutter, and they can get a little bit too similar where everything starts blending together, and this one just wasn't. For me, Maya Banks just does historical and Highlanders really well. I love that Graham was kind of like this tough guy, but he just was such a softie for our heroine, which was Eveline. I love that Eveline had kind of this, not illness, but this kind of problem about her. I don't want to say what it is in case it's a spoiler, but I just love how she was still such a strong character, and while she was flawed, she was such a strong character and almost made stronger because of the things that she's had to go through in her past. I just love this. If you're looking for a Highlander romance, I cannot suggest this enough. Next one is Wreath Bowen, the Molly Murphy Mysteries. Now, so this one I did only give 4 stars, but the second book I did give 5, and I just really enjoyed the 2 books together. There's a lot more in this series that I'm currently trying to get my hands on, and I really want to continue with it. It's a mystery set in like 1900 New York, and it's something I can really see myself kind of enjoying and diving into, because I've had a little bit of trouble kind of feeling my way through the mystery genre and trying to find what really appeals to me, and so far these have been great. And the last one I'm going to mention is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Wong. I feel like I can't make this list without mentioning this because it was such a fantastic read. I feel like it's such an important read. I love these characters. I love how honest the author was. I thought Stella was such a good representation of someone who has autism. I just loved how she was such a good character. You know, she's a person with autism, but that wasn't just all she was. I love seeing her work through her kind of issues with, you know, relationships and any kind of pragmatic problem and all that stuff. I loved Michael. I loved how both the characters were fleshed out and he wasn't kind of left to the wayside. He and his family were great. I can't say enough things. This book is just so adorable. If you're looking for a contemporary that's cute and fluffy but also has really important things in it, definitely look no further. All right, so those are my favorite books for the second quarter of the year. That was really hard actually to make that list. I thought it would be easy to pick about, you know, 10 or 11 books, but it was actually much harder than I thought it would be. But I think I'm good with the ones I picked. Let me know what some of your favorite books that you've read recently are. I'd love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.